March 24, 1944. In the darkness of a German prisoner of war camp, hundreds of men were waiting for their turn to disappear underground. Beneath one of the wooden barracks was a hidden shaft, and at the bottom of that shaft, a tunnel stretched beneath the prison camp. One by one, Allied airmen climbed down and began crawling toward freedom. But this tunnel hadn't been dug in a few desperate nights. It was the result of nearly a year of planning, deception, and underground construction, carried out directly beneath the Germans guarding them. And before the night was over, it would become one of the most famous prison escapes of the Second World War. The camp was called Stalag Luft III. It had been built in German-occupied Poland, specifically to hold captured Allied airmen, many of whom had already tried to escape from other camps. The Germans knew exactly who they were dealing with. The camp was surrounded by fences, guard towers, and open ground. Guards watched the prisoners constantly, and beneath their feet was another obstacle: sand. The loose soil made tunnels difficult to build and dangerous to hide. Dig too close to the surface, and the ground could collapse. Bring the sand above ground, and its lighter color could reveal exactly what the prisoners were doing. The Germans believed they had created a camp that was extremely difficult to escape from. Then came Roger Bushell. Bushell was a British RAF officer. Inside the camp, he became known as Big X, the man responsible for coordinating escape operations. And his plan was far more ambitious than simply getting himself out. He wanted to organize a mass escape. Hundreds of prisoners would be involved, and instead of digging one tunnel hole, they would dig 3. They gave them names: Tom, Dick, and Harry. If the Germans discovered one, work could continue on the others. But digging them required something far more complicated than simply making a hole in the ground. The prisoners were about to build an underground engineering project. The tunnels were dug roughly 30 feet below the surface, deep enough to reduce the chance of German guards detecting activity above. Men worked in spaces so narrow they often had to dig while lying down. But every foot they advanced created another problem. The walls needed support, so wooden boards began disappearing from around the camp. Bedboards, furniture, almost anything that could be turned into timber. Underground, the wood became supports holding back thousands of pounds of sand. But the prisoners went much further. They built small underground rail systems to move men and sand. They installed electric lighting, and because breathing became difficult deep inside the tunnels, they constructed homemade air pumps and ventilation pipes. What had begun as a hole beneath a barrack was slowly becoming an underground transportation system, and all of it had to remain invisible. Then there was the sand. Every day, enormous amounts of it had to be removed from the tunnels. They couldn't simply pile it outside, so prisoners created concealed pouches inside their clothing. They filled them with excavated sand, walked casually around the camp, and released it gradually onto the ground. Other prisoners distracted guards while the sand disappeared beneath their feet. And digging was only one part of the operation. Outside the tunnels, other teams were preparing for what would happen after the escape. Maps were copied, civilian clothes were assembled, documents were forged, compasses were made. Everything hundreds of escaped prisoners might need to move through Nazi-controlled Europe. For months, an entire secret organization operated inside the camp. But the Germans were looking for tunnels too. In September 1943, they found Tom. The tunnel was destroyed. Months of work disappeared. But the Germans had not found Harry, and by early 1944, the prisoners were preparing to use it. Bushell's original vision had been enormous. Hundreds of men escaping in a single night. But when the final preparations were made, around 200 were selected for the attempt. Then came the night of March 24th, 1944. The escape began. Men entered Harry through a hidden shaft beneath one of the barracks. Below them was a tunnel more than 300 feet long. They crawled through darkness toward the forest outside the camp. But almost immediately, they discovered a serious problem. Harry was too short. The prisoners had intended the exit to emerge beneath the cover of the trees. Instead, it opened short of the forest. Anyone climbing out would have to cross exposed ground while German guards were nearby. The plan could have ended right there. Instead, they continued. A man hidden near the trees signaled when it was safe to move. One prisoner emerged, then another, and another. Some disappeared into the darkness carrying forged papers and civilian clothing. Others headed toward railway stations, hoping to put as much distance as possible between themselves and the camp before sunrise. But underground, the operation was moving far more slowly than planned. The tunnel exit had frozen. Man became stuck. There were delays, and every lost minute brought daylight closer. Still, the prisoners kept coming. Then the escape was discovered. A German guard spotted a prisoner near the tunnel exit. The alarm spread through Stalag Luft III. Searchlights swept across the camp. Guards rushed toward Harry. The escape was over. By then, 76 men had made it outside. For a brief moment, they were scattered across Nazi-controlled Europe. Some boarded trains, some traveled on foot. Some tried to cross borders. The German response was enormous. Police, soldiers, and Gestapo units began searching for the fugitives. Railway stations were watched, roads were checked, borders were tightened, and one by one, the escapees were captured. Of the 76 men who escaped through Harry, 73 were eventually caught. Only 3 successfully reached freedom, but what happened next turned the escape into something much darker. Adolf Hitler was furious. Orders were eventually issued that resulted in 50 of the recaptured airmen being murdered by the Gestapo. Roger Bushell was among them. He had spent months organizing the escape. He made it out of Stalag Luft III, but he never made it home. The Great Escape came at a terrible cost. But beneath a camp designed to prevent escape, prisoners had secretly built a tunnel hundreds of feet long, with lighting, ventilation, and underground transport. On the night of March 24, 1944, 76 men escaped through Harry. Only 3 reached freedom. But the tunnel they left behind became one of the most extraordinary escape stories of the Second World War.